All right, so let me start and talk to you about the origin of Legendary. So years ago, my pastor and I became friends because we hunted together. All right, down in Louisiana, everybody hunts, okay? That's where we go to the grocery, we go to the woods. That's how we go to the grocery, okay? And so we all hunt and fish down there, and my pastor and I became very dear friends because we hunted together, and he got real close to me. And then during that time, he said, Phil, I almost burnt out in 2008, and I'm telling you, brother, you're headed for the same train wreck. You cannot sustain this pace. Okay, and he's like, look, you need to go meet my friend Daniel Harkavy, Building Champions on the West Coast. I'm telling you, go to the Building Champions experience. So I go out there. Daniel was speaking on stage and he was introducing the guest speaker. I was seated because we were late to the conference at the front right corner, the worst seat in the house. It's not the seat I wanted. He walks off stage. He says, I'm Daniel Harkavy. I said, I'm Phil Nicaud. He said, Steve Robinson sent you. I said, yes. He said, do you have dinner plans tonight? I said, no. There's 500 CEOs in this room. And he said, can I have dinner with you? I said, yes. We became friends that night. The next day, he ended up giving a talk that helped me to reconcile with my father. We had a strained relationship our entire, really from my entire adult life. And it wasn't just with me, it was with all 5 of the kids. And so Daniel helped me to reconcile with my dad, but he exposed me to an intentional process that helped me to live life on point and on focus. And so 2 years later, I started to do this for other people. It was very supernatural the way my business was started. We had 70 engagements around America. So at that point, it's about $700,000 or $800,000. I grew up in South Louisiana, went all over the world in the Marine Corps, and I had businesses after I got out the Marine Corps, but I had never netted that much money personally myself when this started. And so I'm like, okay, this is a great business, okay? And I'm working with these people. I had to brand in the rear. There were 3 major contracts that produced those engagements. And so I had to brand in the rear, create my systems in the rear. This is after I got the contracts, if you can imagine that. I created my master service agreement, and in the master service agreement, I had a non-disclosure. And because I had a non-disclosure, they took it serious, and they said, okay, well, we can sue you if you say anything that is said in this session. And so they began to talk and expose their life. These leaders were remarkable. Again, all over America. I'm like 34 years old. We sit down, and I start to learn. All these people had a public life. They all had a private life, and they all had a secret life. And so as I began to understand who they were and look at their stewardship, the average was around 120 million in revenue. And I saw some very remarkable things that they did in their private and secret life. These are typically around their faith, generosity, their service. Some of these people many of them had given cars away. A lot of these folks had paid for their employees' children's private school education. No one knew about it. Some of them had given houses away. 3 of them had started food pantries in their organizations in the different parts of America, and no one knew that they were the ones that started it and seeded it. They had some remarkable things. I learned so much from the leaders that I started working with about generosity and their faith and how to put that into action, Sean. And really just, they would do things, pray at work, create out reward systems that reflect the character of Christ in their business. Absolutely amazing. So I saw some good things in their lives. And then as our sessions would go on, again, we had the non-disclosure. And so I saw some things that kind of colored outside the lines. They would say that, Coach, I don't know why I keep doing this. I don't know what it is. It's just, I don't know if it's a compulsion. I don't know if it's because of the way I was raised. I don't know this, that, and the other. But man, it's not something that I want to do. Can you help me out with that? And look, I'm the least judgmental person you ever met. Least religious too. The first thing I'm saying is not, oh, why'd you do that? I'm going, my God, if that can happen to them, it can happen to me. Some of the things that I heard in there were like on another level. It was just like way outside the lines. This is like, look, Coach, you don't understand. I go every, about 4 or 5 months, I crank hard, little Johnny, hey, honey, get out there cranking hard. And man, every 4 or 5 months, I'm just telling you, I got to disappear for about a week and blow it all out. Now, I want you to just use your imagination of what I'm talking about there. And not one of the people that were talking about this felt good about it. They never felt like it aligned with their voice of right and wrong. They wanted to get around that. And so again, my big conclusion is if that can happen to them, that can happen to me. And so what I did is I went on a 4-year journey. I went on a 4-year journey and I wanted to study how do leaders sit in their leadership position for 25 years with no ethical, moral, or financial failures that kick them off the seat. And so I created a 27-page questionnaire and I signed a non-disclosure with every person that I interviewed. And these were top echelon. This is from every sector, business, government. We had an education, a federal education chief, a 3-star Marine Corps general. We had, every different sector of society. I went and flew out and met with them, or I'd drive and meet with them, or I'd get on the phone, or we would do Skype back in those days. And that's how I collected my data. What I discovered, and I want you guys to start writing some of this stuff down. Today, this is not very an inspiring speech. That's not what I'm trying to do is inspire you. You're gonna assess your own character code. You're gonna start a process of assessing. So we're gonna have a little bit of interaction as we go from this point forward. And so what I learned is that they all had, again, a public life, a private life, and a secret life. Public life is your life on your board service, your business. It's what everybody can see. Your private life with your family, your spouse, your children. And then your secret life, this is the life this is your secret place with God. This is your place of faith. This is your place of generosity, the things that nobody knows about. But the people that I started to interview that sat on their leadership positions for 25 years or more with no ethical, moral, or financial failures that kicked them off the seat, they had a high degree of what I call in the book the EPA advantage. Exposure, perspective, and accountability. They had a high degree of transparency, exposure, transparency. They had lots of light, when I say light, I mean eyeballs. People can see into their life. Exposure, perspective, lifted perspective. They've availed themselves to a lifted perspective, and accountability. Accountability. They had the EPA advantage in their public, private, and secret life, and they had it primarily in 3 different dimensions. Their relationships. I want you to leave some space under relationships. Their resolutions, their code of conduct. They all had a policy in their code of conduct, and their rhythms. They monitored their energy output in some frequent fashion. So they had a high degree of the EPA advantage in their relationships, resolutions, and rhythms. We're gonna go into each one of these, and then I'm gonna get into a special word that Kim asked me to share about my time in Israel. I wanna go ahead and define character from a business person's perspective. I've always heard character defined by the religious community, right? A pastor, a priest, they'll go out there and define character, speak into that. And so I've never heard it from a business person's perspective, and so I'll define that now. Character is a person's pattern of speech and behavior observed over time, shaped by their values, informed by their convictions. Simply put, and I put this in the book, character is the invisible persona of a visible person. Your character is built and informed by what I call your moral code. And your moral code is given to you at birth, but it's shaped by your environment. I'm gonna go into that as well. And so we all have this inherent voice of right and wrong. In the book, I say that's why it's not inherent. Now, I know that children say me and mine, okay? I get that. But they don't say I'm going to murder, okay? There's this inherent voice of right and wrong that governs us. We're born into a family, and that shapes all kinds of things. This is your family, your environment, your education, your religious background. That shapes your moral code. So your voice of right and wrong gets tweaked, and it forms what you think is right and wrong. From there, we cast an image of an identity that we aspire to walk in. This informs our words and actions, and our true words and actions reveal to the world our true identity. More importantly, it reveals to us our true identity. Over time, if this is violated, over time, for a long period of time, it could result in tremendous compromise, which will result in disappointment, shame, and regret. Over time, if you are living in line with your voice of right and wrong, it produces integrity, and that produces contentment, fulfillment, and peace. For the people that walk over a long period of time with that, they embody this confidence, this fearlessness, and this authenticity. And I could tell you that the generation that's coming up nowadays, that's what they're looking for. Confident, authentic, fearless leaders to show up. And so I wanted to first define that before we get into it. All right, so let's get into some work. In this, my hope is that at the end of this, you have a clear idea of where you are in your character code. It's very hard to figure out where you're going to go unless you know where you are. That's how the gap is revealed. And so we're going to establish your baseline right now. Remember, nobody's going to see your answers unless you show it to them. This is your work for yourself. And by the way, you're not going to hear me say what should be. That's not my job. My job is to reveal the buckets and you go fill them in. Does that make sense? All right, so on the input relationships, all these people that I interviewed, they all had a full suite of professional services that spoke into their life, okay? Input relationship, inside relationships, we have input, neutral, and output. On the input side, they all had a full suite of professional services, but would it surprise you to know that every single person that I interviewed, and by the way, not all of them were Christian, they all had done deep therapy, deep counseling to some degree, or were actively in counseling, trying to understand how they're wired, how the other people in their team are wired, and where their triggers are. What happened in the past to really go forward to the future. So they all had a counselor, a mentor. When I say a mentor, you know, my mentor right now is a guy named Mr. Bob Jenks. Bob Jenks is my friend Steve's dad, and so he's mentored me for years. Bob is the founder of the largest mediation firm in America, MAPS, and so he's sold that since then. Bob's about 78 years old, and I just love Bob. Bob's mentoring is really one-dimensional, and this is what Bob does. Phil, he doesn't sound like that. He goes, Phil, go tell Elisa you're sorry. And that's Bob's mentoring. He's never one time in our mentoring session said that it was her fault. It's always been my fault. And he tells me, go say you're sorry. Everything's going to be okay. And that's Bob's mentoring. If you don't have that, by the way, in your life, if you don't have a father figure or a mama figure that can speak into your life, I'm just telling you, you're missing out on something special this side of heaven. And so they all had these leaders. These are high capacity leaders. They all had a spiritual voice in their life. So I want you to think about this. This is input relationships. This is people that can see into your life. You have given them vantage into your life. Can anybody tell you no? I'm a founder. Can anybody tell you? In America, they can't, except for the IRS and the civil law. Can anybody tell you no? Can anybody tell you, that's goofy, Phil? But no, you're way off base, Bubba. Have you given an open window for people to speak into your life? All of these leaders had that, sustained for 25 years or more. Neutral relationships, albeit I will admit, as I interviewed these folks, they didn't have a ton of these, okay? And I'm not talking about acquaintances. I'm talking about people that you could just relax and be yourself with. I'm talking about, no, you don't understand, Phil. I'm high capacity. I travel. I do this. No. You have to have somebody that you could just relax and be. I got my siblings. That's good. Family definitely made it on that list. But do you have anybody in your life that you could just be yourself with, relax, hang out, do life? A real strong anchor when you need them. So the first thing I want you to do, let's go back to input. I want you to write on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing in that area? Are you loaded with input relationships to the degree that you want that? Or are you not? Are you bankrupt? 10 is, I got all I could say grace over. And by the way, my life is covered up with this. I value this greatly. It has protected me. It has compelled me into the call of God on my life. It has been a real blessing to have these input relationships. So I want you to rate yourself scale of 1 to 10. And if you choose 6 or 7 or 5, I'm going to ask you this question. Just keep hearing my voice asking you this. Why'd you choose 6? Why didn't you choose 10? Why did you choose 7? Why didn't you choose 2? You need to ask yourself why. And what happens is these contributing factors are going to populate. This is a pattern we're going to do over and over and over again. I can tell you why. I don't have a mentor, Phil. I don't even know what you're talking about when you're talking about mentor. Or you know what? My pastor is my preacher. He ain't my pastor. I don't have a person that can come and speak into my life spiritually. Just me and Jesus. That's it. Come on now. I'm sorry if I'm ruffling feathers. That's what I'm here to do. They put the Marine in there to do that. All right. Neutral relationships. Phil, I don't even know who I am anymore. I go to work and I go home. I've forgotten what it's like to have a hobby and go fishing. I go play golf, but it's all for business. Scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing in that area? Do you have neutral relationships, people that you could just relax, be yourself with, be real, be authentic? You're not on duty. You're not the one that's setting the table. You're actually eating from the table and you're doing it together. Output relationships, all of the people that I interviewed, they all had someone that they were mentoring. And I don't want you to think about this just in terms of your children or your employees. I want you to think about, are you leaving the corners of your field? I often say this about learning, it's not really complete until you give it away. You go read a book and you start to tell somebody else about that, the accountability for that book goes way up, Most of the people that I interviewed, this is admittedly, they had groups of people that they would do this for at a time, and some would travel with junior employees, junior people, folks that they were mentoring. Give yourself a rating on that. How would you rate that on your output relationships? Are you taking everything in and hoarding it for yourself, or are you giving it away too? Then when you choose that number, I want you to ask yourself, why'd you choose that number? Well, I'm doing this, but I'm not doing that. That's good. That's going to be your contributing factors. What we do there is we go straight into those contributing factors and we see where the weaknesses are, develop strategies to bolster that number. The next is resolutions. This is your code of conduct. So in the book, or if you get the PDF, you're going to go through and develop your code of conduct, your policy. You ever thought that you could have a policy for your own life? We have policies that are given to us when we go to work, right? Or we create them for our employees. But the people that I interviewed, their policies and standards were higher than the organizations that they served in. That Marine Corps general, it took me 2 months to get there. The Marine Corps has a policy on proximity with flag officers. You can't just go walk in their office. I had to be vetted, investigated, all of that. Finally, when I did get to the general, I found out his standards were higher than the Marine Corps. It's really remarkable. So these were divided into 3 different categories that I saw: resources, people, and time. And here, again, look, I'm not here to ruffle feathers completely, but I want you to just think about this. I don't have the same convictions as Billy Graham. I don't have the same assignment as Billy Graham, but I do have an assignment. And by the way, all of us carry Jesus in our heart, and we're reflecting the Lord. And so let me ask you, who can look at your money? Who have you given advantage into your resources? Here's what I want to ask you on this when you're rating, not what the policy is. In the book, I talk about the policy. But this is what I want to ask you. Who's your EPA Advantage team? Who have you given exposure, gaining a lifted perspective and accountability to? Resources, people, and the resources, this is every dollar that I earn, give, invest, spend, and save is available to 4 different people. And by the way, one of them is our bookkeeper, and the bookkeeper has it in a cloud, and they got 3 other ladies that can see that as well. This is every credit card transaction. The only way I screw off and do something that I don't want to do, and the only way that, and by the way, is with cash, and they have a right to call me into account with cash. And remember, I don't want you to think about this whole character code as a way to prevent you from doing something wrong. It is that, but it compels you to do what you said you were going to do. And so people that can see this in my life, they're like, hey, Phil, I thought you said you wanted to do this. They don't even have to say it. I know that they know. And so if I'm not doing that, it compels me to press into what I said I was going to do. So give yourself a score there. Scale of 1 to 10. 10, I'm covered up. Everybody can see into my finances. My finances are public. By the way, most of you are business owners. It is not public. You can do whatever you want. But I'm saying if you want to go to the next level of stewardship, then you may want to consider having an EPA Advantage team in every area of your life. John Maxwell says that everything rises and falls on leadership. And we would all agree to that to a large degree. But I say that leaders rise and fall on governance and the lack of governance. This is true, by the way. Everybody that I know that falls, they fall alone and they fall with 0 governance. They have no systems in place to help them when they need it most. We serve an amazing God, but he's invisible. What have you put in place in the visible to govern your life? If I asked you that, what's your governor? If you could tell me, you got it. If you can't, do some work. This is good. All right, so resources, people. This is how people interface with me personally, then email, social media, and text. You cannot email me message me. There's no private message, DM me. Just DM. You can't DM me. If you DM me, 3 people see it. You can, but I have a team that governs me. All right, this does not oppress me. It gives me freedom. I can now move with great freedom. The other reason is I will forget. I will not check it. Do these people email me? I'm like, if you don't carbon copy this person, I'm just going to get lost in the email galaxy. There's just no way. So I do have a private email for confidential clients, but they have to request that per email. Other than that, you're emailing my team. I'm not saying you got to be like me, but what is your governance? So in-person accessibility, I have a policy around how I interrelate with different people, how I travel with them, all of that kind of stuff. Email, social media, text. Rate yourself. As it relates to human beings, give yourself a scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing there? 10, I'm totally covered up. I got all kinds of accountability there, or 1, I don't. Time, this is my calendar, my travel, and my person, my physical person. We have Life 360 for our whole family. So everywhere I go, my phone typically goes. And so I'm not worried about where I went, but there's a little tail that follows it that day. And you can see the little tail, okay, the little trail. All right. And so anyway, I have a policy around that. And by the way, people have vantage into my calendar. They have vantage into where my person is at all times. And then I have a travel policy. What is yours? And if you don't have that, you might want to consider developing that. And so here's the question I want to ask. Scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing with that? Why? Then you want to ask yourself, why? Well, Phil, I don't even need that. You don't understand. I mean, my life's way less complex. No. We all carry Jesus, and we're one decision away from stupid. I know you say that with a room full of men, and you ladies are a little bit better than us. I'm just telling you, we're one decision away from stupid at any time. And in this day and age, it is more important than ever. There is no secret life. Everything is exposed. I'll never forget, I'll tell you the story. I'm sitting there, and my son, this is years ago, my son was talking to my wife in a way that I was like, okay, we don't do that in my house. And so I started talking to him in a way that I wouldn't want any of you guys to hear, okay? And my daughter looks over, and she's just like sitting there looking up at me, and she has her phone, and there's a little face in the circle, and she's looking at me like this. I said, are you FaceTiming somebody? And they said, bye, Mr. Phil, and they hung up. And so you don't have a secret life. These phones are everywhere, okay? And by the way, the first name of my book was Our Secret Life. That was the first name of my book. John Gordon was the one that said, you need to change that to the character code. It's easier, and that's what they're doing. I was like, okay. All right, so let's move on to the last one. This is rhythms. So every single person that I interviewed, they would consistently monitor their energy output. And I would say that all of us need to do that too. Is that not right? So this was categorized in spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. And so on the spiritual side, when you're rating this, I say, how are you doing spiritually? You're gonna start thinking about your human doing. Well, I'm doing this, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this, I'm not doing that. I don't want you to think like that. I want you to think on your human being side. I don't feel connected to God. I know I'm born again. I know I'm going to heaven. But man, his voice is really, really light. I don't sense his presence in the morning. I've been ripping and running, Phil. I just get up and go. How are you doing spiritually? Is the voice of God clear in your heart? Is the direction of the Lord clear? Do you know that he's with you, that he's for you, that he's the wind in your sail? Are you availing yourself to him? What does it look like spiritually? Give yourself a rating scale of 1 to 10. And this is where I really want you to ask the question, why'd you choose that number? Take a minute, do that. How are you doing spiritually? And in there, just get that number. And when you ask yourself why, you'll start to see the contributing factors. Rate each one of those and figure out where your weak spots are, and we'll be able to bolster that number. Second, mental emotional. 12% of Americans confessed publicly that they had mental emotional issues they were struggling with pre-COVID. It's 42% officially. I don't think it's that. I think it's higher globally since the pandemic. This means that, for me, almost half my kids are struggling. Your employees, just figure it out. See their faces and names. They're struggling mentally and emotionally. And I want to ask you that as leaders. By the way, we've all been through some traumatic stuff. Everybody in this room, if you're a business owner, you've had event-centric trauma. You've had accumulated trauma. And if you've had anything happen, that's just as a business owner in the past 10 years. And if you have had anything happen personally where you have complex trauma, this is something that needs to be addressed. How do you know? Well, you go from 0 to nuclear in 10 seconds, okay, in a conversation, right? You walk in there, you're the one that they're always saying is the bulldozer, right? And so undealt with, unhealed pain produces powerful present problems. And so on the emotional side, rate yourself. You know, do you have these limiting beliefs, these thoughts that constantly hold you back, these fears, compulsions, any kind of highs and lows they just suck you in the cave and you get stuck there for a long period of time? If that's you, just rate yourself, give yourself an honest score. And then ask yourself why. And then let's go see how we can get you to some help with that. All right? We need you to show up healthy and strong. Your teams do. All right, lastly, physical. Rate yourself scale of 1 to 10, diet, exercise, medical. In the book, I say physical, medical because I'm 50 and, we had to get all the medical and I kept putting it off. And I'm like, how many other people are putting that off too? So rate yourself scale of 1 to 10, physical, medical, and then, do the work. Ask yourself why you chose that. Okay, so I told you this wouldn't be very inspiring. It's work. We're getting into it. But you know what I care about? If you move from A to B, I care about action, practical. Come on. I do want to inspire you, and I am going to inspire you in a minute from a story in the Sea of Galilee. It was great. But what I care about is I met you for 35 minutes, and when I see you again one day, maybe in heaven, maybe here on this earth, you can say, Phil, I took it serious what you did. I went and did an inventory. I got that mentor. If one person in this room gets the mentor, it's worth my trip from New Orleans to come and see you. All right? If one person begins to do some things that increase their level of health, emotional, accountability, or maybe they start to steward well, if this avoids one major disaster in one of these leaders' lives, it's worth our time together. Amen? All right, so my call to action is you to go book an offsite retreat with yourself. Go by yourself. The whole Kingdom Leadership Summit, the Kingdom Leadership Network, this whole thing came out of this whole nonprofit side to what we do. It came out of me going on sabbatical. There's 50 of us men at our church in Mandeville, Louisiana, that go away 3 times a year for little bitty pocket sabbaticals. And while I was there, I was in a chapel and I asked the pastor to pray for me and my wife and 5 kids and asked him to pray for this network idea. And he said, Phil, a net is only as strong as the knots in the net. And he started praying. And as he started praying, I'm just telling you, that whole little bitty chapel filled up with God's presence. And I heard him speak to me, strengthen the knots in the net. Strengthen the knots in the net. Strengthen the knots in the net. That was God's way of saying, Phil, I'd like for you to be a part of this big, Great Commission unity movement that I'm doing over the global body of Christ. And we did. And last year, it was remarkable what God did. And it's even better. Wait till you see next week. So I want you to go and do that. You don't discount how powerful it is when you separate and go hang out with the King. Just go sit with him in his presence. Pour yourself over this. I'm telling you, get the book. It's a workshop in a book. You could get that for free. I'm giving it to you. Go look through it and do the work. Create your own governance. Create your own unique character code. This will give you the confidence, authentic. This will give you the clarity, focus, and intentionality to maximize your life, leadership, and legacy. If you say to me, Philip, this was great. I like you. You look like Buzz Lightyear. I'm going to remember you. Okay. But I'm not going to do it. I know myself. I'm not going to go and study a book and do this. Then our team will do it for you. Go ahead and take a picture of the QR code. You could come in December 10th through 12th. We rent a whole hotel in New Orleans, and we do this for executives and CEOs. We'll have hundreds of these CEOs that come in for that, and we guide them through this process. And so we can do that. All right. Does that sound good, everybody? All right, let's move on. Last year was my first time going to Israel. And so I went with my 2 sons, Luke and Philip. That's us getting baptized in the Jordan River. And we had 21 other students that were with us. We went through all kinds of, and again, every single hill in Israel we humped, and it was awful for me. For them, they were skipping around, like they do when they're 20. And we went through Hezekiah's tunnel. I think I told this story last night. And I'm not meant to go through Hezekiah's tunnel. Anybody know what Hezekiah's tunnel is? He built a 600-yard long tunnel to tunnel the Gihon Spring into the Pool of Shalom. So there's water running under your feet, and you're in the belly of Mount Moriah. and the tunnel is this thick, this thin. My shoulders are 2 times the size of this tunnel. I'm doing this for 600 yards. Have my pack like this. I'm shuffling through. Anyway, God speaks to me right in the middle of the tunnel. Not going to talk to you about that. Later on, we go to the Galilee region. There's a Catholic church there now, and this is where Jesus really recommissions Peter. You guys remember this story in John chapter 21. And so my son is reading this story, Luke, and we're on the Sea of Galilee. And this is the story where Jesus, he's the resurrected Lord. He comes out on the shore and he says, fellas, y'all catch anything? And they said, no, we've been fishing all night. And he said, well, cast on the right side of the boat. And they did, and a big load of fish come in. John recognizes it's the Lord. Peter jumps in the water, goes to the shore. Jesus is on the shore cooking fish. And he says, Peter, bring the net in, bring in the catch. And the Bible records 153 large fish, and the net did not break. Now, when I heard that the net did not break, my son kept on reading from John chapter 21. All these kids were out there. Again, here it comes. The Lord visits me right there on the Sea of Galilee. Everything fades from my mind. And he says, why'd that net not break, son? Why did that net not break? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe they put oil on the knots. You know, I grew up in the seafood business. I learned to drive on a shrimp truck. You know, I'm like fishing for, what? I don't know why the net didn't break. Why'd that net not break? It wouldn't stop. Why did that net not break? So afterwards, I asked Aryeh Bar David, who's like a legend in Israel, warrior, paratrooper, great guy. Aryeh is about 79 years old. And I said, Aryeh, I got one question for you. Why'd the net not break? And he didn't even hesitate, ladies and gentlemen. He said, why did the bush not burn? Talking about Moses and the burning bush. And I was like, I don't know. He said, Philip, it must have been a work of the Holy Spirit. And he said, besides, Jesus said, bring the net in. So you had the word of the Lord, the work of the Spirit, and he looks at me like this, and I said, and an obedient vessel. He goes, you got it, Philip. Sound like Mr. Miyagi. You know, I'm like, okay, all right. So what does it take to start, steward, and sustain a kingdom movement or initiative? You must have the word of the Lord. You must have the word of the Lord. You're not going to feel like continuing this work, and you're going to have to reference back, did God speak to me? John Maxwell next week is doing a custom talk on strengthen the knots in the net. I was like, I wanted you to do Jesus, the high road leader. He goes, Phil, I like the way you worded that. I said, all due respect, Mr. Maxwell, I didn't come up with that, and the devil didn't give it to me. That had to be the Lord. Well, he said, well, I like it anyway. It's creative, so I'm going to do it. The word of the Lord. It must be the work of the Spirit. Don't try to endeavor kingdom initiatives in your own strength. You can't do it. You'll burn your marriage up, your family up, your kids, you know, your relationships, your team. It must be the work of the Spirit. You got to consistently roll this onto the shoulders of the Lord. He's the only one that can carry his call. And you got to stay clean, empty, and surrendered. It's the key. How do you start, steward, and sustain a kingdom movement or initiative? You got to have the word of the Lord. It must be a work of the Spirit. And you got to have an obedient vessel. Step out. Thank you for being with me, everybody. This was great to be with you.